Hello everyone, welcome in. In this video, we are going to be comparing Gypsy Rose's sentence and how she only spent 8 years in prison because of pleading guilty to her crimes, to Alexee pleading not guilty and going to trial. And I do think there are quite a few things Alexee can learn from Gypsy Rose. Just a quick rundown of Gypsy Rose, in case anyone doesn't know. She was a victim of Munchausen by proxy. Her mother lied to her about illnesses and her age and a multitude of other things. Gypsy tried to escape and get out from under the rule and abuse of her mother. Ultimately, most of her efforts failed, and her final attempt was to get her internet boyfriend, Nick Godejohn, to stab and kill her mother to death. Gypsy Rose stole a knife from Walmart, supplied it to Nick Godejohn, and instructed him on how to kill her mother. They then fled and posted on the mother's Facebook numerous posts that drew concern and ultimately had the mother's body found. It was not long after that Nick Godejohn and Gypsy Rose were then arrested for the crime. And you have to be living under a rock or new here if you don't know. Alexee is a cheerleader who allegedly concealed and denied her pregnancy and gave birth in Artesia General Hospital bathroom, wrapped the baby in a plastic trash bag, concealed that trash bag under a fresh trash bag, and cleaned the bathroom, told no one the baby was found, and reported to the police. Alexee was arrested about 5 months later. She is waiting for trial, which should be at the end of this. So what is it exactly that Gypsy Rose can teach to Alexee? Gypsy Rose was able to spend only 8 years in prison and be released on parole as she is now because she pled guilty. It is a fact that if you plead guilty to your crimes, you get a much lesser sentence a majority of the time. I do believe that everyone has the right to fight the charges that are levied against them, but when it comes to Alexee's case, it seems wise, with the overwhelming amount of evidence against her and the lack of experts who are willing to testify on her behalf, that she is likely to be found guilty, as well as face the punishment that Gypsy Rose's conspirator faces for his part in the murder, which is life in prison without parole. So with that being said, Gypsy Rose could have been facing life in prison without parole as well for her part in the killing of her mother. But she took the smarter route, for lack of a better term, and got a deal. Nick Godejohn went to trial and hung on a defense of his autism and basically tried to claim that he was not in control of his actions and shouldn't be held accountable. Basically an insanity plea, right? Well, he is currently on an appeal. He was found guilty. And if you can see the difference in what happens when you plead guilty and when you fight with overwhelming amounts of evidence against you, what actually happened. The release of Gypsy Rose caused some very interesting issues online because a lot of people were in support of Gypsy and a lot of people were upset that she was being released. Now, she did serve her time, and that is the deal she made. We cannot be upset at the fact that she is out of prison. We can't hold her against what has already legally been set, right? That we, unfortunately, for the people upset at that, you have to accept that that was the deal that was put in place. On the other hand, people who supported Gypsy seem to maybe identify with the fact that she was a victim who got vigilante justice for herself by murdering her mother, who I guess they do not believe she had any other means to escape from. So this kind of brings up an interesting question, which is, when it comes to vigilante justice, when do we excuse it as a society? An example of vigilante justice that I believe should be excused, just to show that everyone has their own bias and how they believe certain situations should play out. Cain Velasquez is an MMA fighter whose son was molested at the daycare he was attending by the daycare owner's son. You see the picture of him at the bottom. Now, do not get preconceived notions about Cain Velasquez because he is an MMA fighter or anything like that. He has no history of violence outside of sanctioned events. He seems to be a loving, caring father and a hard worker. Obviously, upon news of his child being molested over 100 times, and the child being the one who came forward to talk about other children being taken into the bathroom by this disgusting piece of shit, this guy gets arrested for the molestation and he gets released on bail. Cain Velasquez is upset by that and he gives chase for 11 miles in his vehicle after this disgusting pedophile. And he eventually ends up shooting into the vehicle, and no one died. No one died from this action, but obviously Cain Velasquez lost his temper and lost his cool after knowing that this guy who molested his child was going to be out on the streets seeing basically zero time behind bars, despite all the probable cause against him. Cain Velasquez has spent more time in jail for his actions than the pedophile. So, this is an interesting issue for me because it seems as though the people who support Gypsy Rose kind of wish that there was an out, that she actually didn't get any punishment, or that, since she was a victim of these horrible crimes, it excuses what she did. Even Gypsy Rose doesn't excuse what she did. She knows that it was wrong. This brings up a very interesting legal topic that does not get discussed very often, because even though jurors are allowed to do it, they are not allowed to be instructed on it. And that is the issue of jury nullification. That is when, despite overwhelming evidence against a defendant, the jury decides, because of morals or their own feelings, to not convict that defendant, despite their obvious guilt. It might sound crazy because Cain Velasquez gave an 11-mile chase and shot into someone's vehicle, but I would hope for a jury nullification in this case. He spent well over 100 days in jail. He knows what he did was wrong. He's trying to get help for him and his son. And this guy is still out on the streets because, I don't know why, because our system doesn't really take crimes against children very seriously, I guess. But in certain instances like this, where you can completely understand the why and the how someone got to where they did to commit a crime, I do believe that, especially with crimes against children, we shouldn't encourage vigilante justice, but we should encourage jury nullification. But at the same time, when and how do we excuse people's behavior when they've become a victim of a situation? I do think that Cain Velasquez has quite the excuse for his behavior when you see the man who hurt your child over 100 times and other children walking out of a courthouse with what seems to be no urgency to keep this man away from kids or to care about what he's done to your child. It might make you snap and want to do something yourself. And will a jury nullify Mr. Velasquez of his charges? Only time will tell. One can hope. But it does seem as though people kind of conflated wanting Gypsy Rose to be completely acquitted, nullified, or charges dropped because she was a victim, as compared to the strategic legal move that she actually made by pleading guilty. Unfortunately for Cain Velasquez, he's going to have to, rest in hope on a jury nullification where everyone on that jury can understand why he did what he did. And since no one died, they just let him go. Is the likelihood of that is very, very low. It's very unlikely. And so Gypsy Rose, despite her victim status, made a very smart legal move to plead guilty. I'm not telling Alexee or anyone what to do. This is not legal advice, but it is probably likely that Alexee's found guilty by a jury of her peers. And because she fought and was found guilty of a jury of her peers, the judge is likely to impose the harshest sentence possible, which in her case is obviously life without the possibility of parole. She can try for an appeal, but the likelihood of that going through is also very low. So I tried to cram a lot into a little bit of time in this video, but I hope you guys can understand a bit of the difference with victims as well as actual criminal defendants who decide to either, be smart with the system or bet it all and risk it. Because in Alexee's case, if she had tried to plead down, she'd likely be seeing no time in jail. She's maybe pushed it past that time limit as far as it goes now. I'm almost guaranteeing she's going to go to trial and not plead guilty. But like I've said here before, in New Mexico, there is no mandatory minimum prison sentence for murder too. If her and her team were being smart and strategic with, the charges against her and the evidence against her, they would probably try and plead down to murder too with a deferred sentence and have no prison time, but serious probation, right? So that is what I think Alexee can learn from Gypsy Rose. I think Gypsy Rose was smart with what she did legally. I think it's sad that Nick Godejohn is still in prison. Do I think he needs to be removed from society completely? Yes, I do. But maybe a mental institution is more proper for someone like him. Those are just my thoughts and opinions. I'm curious to hear what you think about these issues down below. Sorry if this was too quick or confusing. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Stay tuned because on Saturday, the 27th, I will be having my little memorial video come out for baby Alex. It's something quick I put together, about 3 or 4 minutes, and then a long period of silence for baby Alex. But stay tuned for that because I do think baby Alex deserves to be honored on that day. And so thank you so much if you made it this far in this video. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I do genuinely enjoy the conversation. If you're interested in following cases like this to trial, please subscribe as I'll be covering the Alexee Trevizo case all the way with a legal focus. It's your girl Friday. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.